Unfortunately, not with them today. So these guys are doing it on their own, you know, and that's really cool to have the musicians that have enough energy and persistence to come in and do this. So they've got 3 songs prepared for you, and I'll turn it over to Dan.
Hello. We're the Pioneer Dixie combo. My name's Ethan Sayers. I play trombone. Bryce Hansen on trumpet. Robbie Bennett on clarinet. Robbie Rupert on drums. And Cameron Shellnut on tuba. And lastly, Gone McFarland on piano. The first song we'll be playing for you is Down by the Riverside. Up next is kind of a slower, we're going to go on the slower, sadder place. You all know it, St. James Infirmary, so we just need to get all set and we're all ready. Let's go. The last piece we'll be playing for you is 5'2" Eyes of Blue. Okay. Thank you. So, yay! That's plus for us. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Guys. Very, very excellent. You know, I was listening to you guys play, and I couldn't wait to get down here because you do so many things wonderfully, and you're a strong group. And I just want to go over a couple of things. I just give you throw some ideas out there. For clarinet, one thing that I do notice is you're all strong players, and you all have good sounds, but I don't understand the music stands. And because I'm hearing how good you are, and I'm thinking, boy, you guys could probably memorize the music very quickly. So, you know, and if you need the music, because a lot of times you play jobs where you're playing something and you're doing a lot of tunes, put the stands all the way down, because they get in the way of the audience seeing you. So if you can play with the stands down, that would be great. That's a big change, make a big difference. The other thing is if you memorize, music's a conversation. You know, there's a fellow I know, I'm from New Jersey, right? And when you talk to him, he never looks at you. When you're talking to him, he looks this way. And you know, one of the things we do is when you start talking to him, he's looking this way. You walk around him, and he just keeps turning around, you know, because he's never going to look at you. If you memorize, you can look at your audience, because music's a conversation, so that makes a big difference. let me go through things, a couple of things. One, with the mic for the clarinet, your balance is pretty good, and actually very good. And I'm almost going to say, do you really need the mics? Because one thing without a microphone, you learn to project. But in rooms with certain acoustics, you have to have mics, you know. But one of the things I do is I put the clarinet mic. This was down because of an earlier performance, but I try to put it in a place where it's in the middle of the clarinet. You know, and a lot of times I see people put the mic where the bell is, and nothing comes out the bell, you know, except for your middle B and your low E. And so what happens is you end up with a very nasal sound if the mic's too low. So if you put it in the middle, it makes a big difference. Can we go, I want to go to the last tune. I might as well work backward. The last tune you played. Just want to give you throw out a couple ideas here. The great drummers of the Dixieland era, beautiful timekeeping, by the way. It really is. But you know, if you called them a drummer, they would be insulted. You know, a friend of mine knew Sonny Greer, Duke Ellington's famous drummer, and there they did. I called him a drummer. He says, "I'm not a drummer. I'm a percussionist, and my job is to add color to the band." You know, you know, so, and you see a lot of guys, and sometimes I listen to a jazz recording and the guy's riding on the cymbal and he never changes. And so he's not listening to how the colors of the band change. And back in the 20s, and a lot of this was because recording equipment was primitive then. And a lot of times they couldn't use a whole drum set. They would just use a cymbal or a wood block, because if you hit anything hard, it would make the needle jump. They used a needle to cut the record, and it would make it jump. So what we hear in the performances was not because that was the style, it was because that was the only way they could record it. You know, but they did have a whole arsenal of effects that they would make. On that 5'2", because you were doing something very interesting on that melody chorus, but you're doing it on the snare. Do you ever think of doing it on a choke cymbal? So like where they would go, you know, bum ba dum, ba ba da, da da da, and then go into time. You know, so you're doing 4 bars of answering them, and then at the end of the 4 bars, you know, then you can do 4 bars of time, and then go back to that again. It's just like the color thing. Who does your arrangements, by the way? They just arrangements you purchased, or? Okay, very nice playing. They're very interesting. You know, there's a lot more going on than I see in a lot of the other arrangements I hear. Can we hear the beginning of 5'2" again? Yeah. And can you lower the stands? Yeah. Now, one thing I have to say, a little confession on my part. You know, I wear glasses, and I'm as blind as a bat. I'm really nearsighted. And so, especially when you play in big bands, the music stands for the sax sections are way down here. And then the leader wants the sax section to stand. And so I'm looking below my glasses, trying to look at the music, which means it's, you know, I can't even see the stand, let alone the music. So I had to do a lot of memorization, you know. And then you develop a way of looking through your glasses, trying to see the music. And you know, you get, but if the stands are too high, it hurts the way you play too. Okay, just play where there's an intro, right, and then the tune comes in. Can we just start right on the tune? Yeah, right on the tune without the intro. Is that okay? I do the intro. Do the intro. I'll make it faster. Okay. All right, do it with the intro. Okay. On this tune, you know, because you're playing what the rhythm section's playing, and then you're playing the fill. So you're going bump bump ba dum bump bump ba dum, right? Leave out the bump bump, right? The first 2. Just do the answer, and if you can, put your one hand on the cymbal, right, and choke it. So you're going to hit it, and then as soon as you hit the second note, choke the cymbal. Give it a try. What they would do, yeah, like that, right? And probably. a different cymbal would give it more sound. But don't be afraid to hit it too hard and make it like the second one, grab the cymbal quick. They usually would use one hand to grab it, hit it with the one stick and then grab it, you know. But just try it, just, yeah, do it from where the melody comes in. Da, 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 ba, da. And you just need to do that, you know. You could do it on snare too, but just let me just see how that sounds. Right where the melody starts? Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Contrast. Now, it might sound better if you do it on the open hi-hat. They would use a splash. They would have that small splash they would use, but it's just another effect that you can use. Now, when the tune comes in, can you guys play without looking at the music? The tune, da, da, da. Yeah, just from the tune. Is that all right? Yeah, just where the, so, what's that? See, it's all about my glasses. Number 9, right? Yeah, try it without looking at the music. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And it's funny, you know, when you're a horn player, it's different than playing a percussion instrument or piano because, you know, you strike the drums or you strike a key and the note comes out. We don't get the correct note unless we hear the note at the same time. And so we're actually not playing the tunes, we're singing them. See? And so if you memorize the tune, it gives us more of a chance to vocalize. You know, and it becomes more fun. Yeah, that's just one, yeah. In the arrangement, how are you dividing up the solos? Just to
Okay, so Robin plays here to the repeat and then plays again, and then Ethan trombone plays here to here, and then Super repeats it.
Oh, okay. It's yeah. All right. So the way that it's orchestrated, the chart does is a little bit confusing. So I can see where the problem lies. The song form is what they call AABA. It's 8 bars of melody by repeat of that 8 bars. And in the B section, what we call the bridge is a different 8 bars, and then it goes back to the other 8 bars. And so one of the things you might want to do is memorize the song form and the chords so that you're not looking at this when you're playing the solos. Because what happens is it's very easy for a rhythm section, for a band to get confused and end up in 2 spots at the same time. Does that make sense? I'm a clarinet player, so you play very nice. You play very, very good. And it's funny because you study classical, right? Because you have a very legit sound, which is wonderful. But and there's guys of the era that you really captured that tone quality. So I'm really excited to hear your tone quality. Some of the guys that if you listen to the early recordings, remember the recordings are primitive. So but if you listen to very early Benny Goodman, from the 20s, if you can find it, or there was a guy named Leon Rapolo who was with the New Orleans Rhythm Kings, who was an influence, and then Jimmy Noon, but these were guys that had classical backgrounds too, but you're really getting that sound. And what I liked in all of you, that when you played your solos, you know the melodies. And see, there's so many musicians I hear, they want to improvise. And to them, improvisation is playing, how many notes can I play? And there was a comedian on TV in the 50s named Sid Caesar, and he used to do a bit where it was a jazz band. And they would be playing jazz, and one of the guys' name was Radar, and he was to warn any soloist that when they got too close to the melody. So jazz, the idea behind jazz was you don't go close to the melody. But no, great jazz players play the melody. Leonard Feather reviewed an album by Ben Webster, and Ben Webster plays Memories of You basically straight. And in the liner notes, Leonard Feather, talks about his solo in Memories of You, and not even realizing that, but he was able to play the melody and make it his own. In fact, there's another Ben Webster story. There's a Ben Webster story where Leonard Feather was interviewing Ben Webster, And Leonard Feather was talking about Ben Webster's ballad playing, and he thought he'd say something condescending. He said, you know, when Benny Goodman plays a ballad, all he does is play the melody. And Ben Webster stood up and he said, that's because he can. You know, so the melody is very important. So I was really excited to hear that. And the beginnings of developing a great improvisation style is you learn to play the melodies and make it your own. And then what you do is you decorate it. Sometimes little grace notes or a little line of notes leading to the melody note. And you know, and because the great jazz players could play a melody and decorate it. And that's where all improvisation begins. Yeah. Could I go to St. James Infirmary? Okay. Now, there was something really interesting going on because in your part, you're playing whole notes, right? Behind the ensemble, right? In the ensemble, in the first chorus, that's very effective. But behind the solos, I would go to 4. What I would do is, play. If you can take your part. Don't change the part. Just play quarter notes. Try to stay with the root in the 5th of the chord. A lot of times rhythm sections will try to get real fancy, and they'll want to play all these other notes. Well, that takes away from the soloist, because then the soloist has no notes left to play. So anyway, the other thing is in the beginning of the arrangement. I liked what you were doing. Did you ever think of doing it on a tom-tom? Like playing you're playing a rhythm on the tom-tom, because it's supposed to have that mysterious dark quality, and just play the beginning of the arrangement, and I'll show you what I mean. But play on either the tom-tom or the 2 tom-toms go back and forth, but play the rhythm you would play, but play it on those, and see if it develops a different character. Go ahead. You guys play like you normally play. Yeah. You're going to dance it. What some guys do, they turn the snare off and they'll play on the snare the same, yeah. Give it a try. Go ahead. Things that, you make your quarter notes shorter. Think of yourself as a string bass player. So they put space between the notes. Yeah, and it's a great rhythm section because when you had all that freedom, what you were doing sounded great, but you had all that freedom to add that color because their time was so good. So it's, because a lot of times, my brother's a drummer, and we would, and percussionist, yes, and we would be playing the job, and he would be playing drums, and it would look like a big band job. And let's say one of the sections is laying behind the beat; they're not keeping the rhythm. And my brother called me over. He said, "My legs are getting so tired with the bass drum and the hi-hat, trying to pull these guys along or hold them back. You got two great guys with you, so that gives you all that freedom." Yeah. It's interesting because whoever did these charts, they put a lot of interesting things in them. And one is in the verse, which you never hear the verse to St. James Infirmary, which is nice to hear that verse. What's interesting is the first half of it, you have the lead, and then it goes to you, which is really great. You want to think of the air moving faster. So it's not the amount of air you blow, it's the speed of the air. If you think about it blowing on a pinwheel, and one of the things I'll demonstrate to people is I'll play a note real loud, and they'll look at and I'll say, "How much air do you think it took me to play that note that loud?" And they'll look at me and they say, "Well, you're blowing hard." I say, "I'm not using enough air to blow out a match. It's just a very small stream of air, but it's moving fast enough to keep that reed vibrating." And the same thing with brass, keep your lips vibrating. And what it does, but the other thing it does, is by moving that air, so you're using your stomach muscles. And a good exercise to do is take a sheet of newspaper, because all you guys get great tones. And what you do is you hang the sheet of newspaper in front of you, and you blow on it like this, right? But you try to move it only an inch away. Because most people think blowing a horn means you go, where all your air's going, right? And you're tired. But if you just do, and you just move the piece of newspaper an inch away and you hold it there, and you develop that frees up your whole embouchure. People come to me all the time and say, "How do you teach embouchure?" I say, "I don't. There's no such thing as an embouchure." And they look at me and they say, "What do you mean there's no such thing as an embouchure?" I said, "It's an airstream." And I say, "You singers or flute players, what part of their lips are they using?" The clarinet player came up to me one time, he says, "You have to tighten the embouchure as you go higher." And I said, "If you're a brass player and you press, the higher you go, that kills your embouchure." And I said, "Sing me a scale." And they'll sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And I'll say, "What part of your embouchure did you tighten as you sang up the scale?" So it's all air from here. It's all breathing from here. I'm not leaving the rhythm section out. I knew a great accompanist, pianist, and a fabulous drummer who both took breathing lessons, vocal lessons, on breathing, because rhythm sections have to phrase with the horns. But moving that air fast will free all this up. But not only that, you'll be able to play pianissimo, and they'll hear you in the back row. There was a guy named William Kincaid who was flute player in the Philly Orchestra, a very famous flute player, back in the 1950s. And they said he would play a low B on the flute pianissimo through the whole orchestra, and everybody in the audience could hear it. So it's the speed of the air that makes all the difference. And when you practice, but if you practice, if you play as a section reading the charts, your mind's going to be saying, "What's the next note? What's the next note?" And every time you hesitate to think of what the next note is, you slow the airstream down. And every time you slow that airstream down, your embouchure gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and there goes your sound. If you drive down the freeway in a car and you're on cruise control, that gas is entering the cylinders at an even pace, and you get maximum efficiency. But if you're up and down on the gas pedal, so the car's slowing down, speeding up, your mileage goes out the window. You get terrible mileage because that rate of flow keeps changing. Same thing when you're playing a horn. So if you memorize the charts, the only thing you have to think about is that airstream. So I liked in the solos how all of you played the melodies. You know the melodies, and that seems so lacking in so many jazz players. They think, "I want to play jazz." I don't want to play jazz. I want to play tunes. I love the tunes. They're just, all kinds of tunes. Playing just off of chord progressions is boring. If I'm playing Lady Be Good, I'm playing Lady Be Good. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? So all of you know your melodies, which is great. It's time to start experimenting, just adding notes to those melodies. Can I hear the first tune now? Yeah. You know, it's far from me to tell you what to do, but it's a nice mouthpiece, but it's very dark sounding. So for playing through this kind of music, you have to work a little harder. And I know people who go the other way. See, I use classical equipment on my clarinet too, and I find that they have so-called jazz mouthpieces, and I always wonder, that means if I buy this mouthpiece, I can play jazz, But the thing is they're bright and they're edgy and they're out of tune, and so you find something that's like in between, but even like a Selmer mouthpiece, right now, like a Van Doren B45 is a mouthpiece that's like middle of the road, but that'll give you much more comfort in cutting through the band. For this style of music, it's the right equipment to play. So just, because you sound great, and you got a beautiful clarinet there too. Let's hear the beginning of this. Do you guys get together as a horn section and practice like a sectional? Whole band. The great bands, what they would do is the horns would get together and the rhythm section would get together and they would practice separately. Because the horn players have a tendency to depend too much on the rhythm section. If everybody in the band has great rhythm, that frees up your rhythm section. And it's amazing because when you get together, if the three of you get together, and your pitch and everything, your attack is so good, it would even get better. But the other thing you can do is you can experiment. You can look at the arrangement and say, well, I like what he did here, but we could change it a little bit. And that makes it your own music too. But could the three horns just play the intro for me? Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, play it again. Just the intro, slower. Feels weird without the rhythm section, right? Yeah, you don't have those guys to depend on anymore. But what happens is you'll develop the rhythm. Listen to Louis Armstrong's record of Weatherbird, where it's just him and Earl Hines on piano. And Earl Hines, he liked to play with rhythms. He would do polyrhythms all over the place, So you were on your own if you were playing with Earl Hines. But how easily it flows. Benny Goodman used to rehearse the band. A friend of mine back in the late 30s and the 40s used to go to NOLA Studios in New York and watch Benny rehearse. Never rehearsed with the rhythm section. Yeah, play that intro again. I'll do it slow. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. It feels weird to play it at a different tempo than you're used to playing, and you wanted to go back to the other tempo. The other thing that's interesting is when you practice, play it real slow, then a little faster, then a little faster, then a little faster. And then you'll learn to play it at any tempo. The number one question I get from people when I perform is, how did you learn to play so fast? I look at them and I say, practice everything slow. And they laugh, they think I'm kidding. And I said, no, I never practice fast. And they say, well, why? How does that help you play fast? The only way you learn to play fast is total relaxation. And if you practice slow, you learn to totally relax. And then once you got it at a slow tempo, you can play it at any speed. So music is a lot of opposites of what you think it is. One more time, the introduction. Bum, 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 bum. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you keep wanting to go back to the tempo, play one time. 2, 3, 4. 2, you look panicked. So, hey, you know what? The only way you learn new notes is by playing long notes. If you play every note on a piece of paper perfectly, you've learned nothing. Unfortunately, in life, we only learn by our mistakes. So whenever you make a mistake, you say, this is great. I tell my students, they come into a lesson, they look nervous. And I said, you come in here like you want to play a concert for me. I said, I don't want to hear a concert. If I want to go hear a concert, I'll go out and hear a concert. What I want to do is teach you a lesson. And I said, the number one thing on your mind is I don't want to play a wrong note. I want to play a wrong note in front of him, right? And I said, if you're worried about not playing worried about playing wrong notes, you'll never play music. I said, you can play as many wrong notes as you want, as long as they're in tune and they sound beautiful. Because if you play wrong notes and they're in tune and they sound beautiful, I'll be excited. If you play all the right notes and they sound timid and colorless, what's the point? Everybody at that tempo, don't look at it. That's show. 1, 2, 3, 4. But you practice, you get together as a horn section to do that. Take 4 measures at a time. Play it 3 times, looking at the music, and then 1 time not looking at it. You'll be amazed at how, The other thing that's interesting is all the great bands, they would play things they would change the tempo up. There's a famous recording of there's a live broadcast, the one I can think of offhand is, everybody's heard Glenn Miller's String of Pearls. And he's like, bum, 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 da, da, right? There's a live broadcast of the band, and they come in, and they're like, dun, 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 really slow. Less than half the tempo of the commercial record, right? And it swings. It sounds like a freight train. They have all that energy. Don't use speed to make your energy too. And so one more time with that intro. You can do a tempo. Why don't you count it off, and you got it. Yeah. Take it to the point where you think the notes will distort. You know what I mean? And yeah, because you're playing very politely, but you can, bring it out more. So as a horn section, it would be great if you guys can get together. As I said, you're playing the parts great, but if you get together just as the horns, I like your count-offs, and it reminds me, there was a famous sax player that and I won't mention his name, but most people go 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And when he counted tempo, he'd go, I don't know if I can do it, he'd go 1, 2. The snap would be on 1 and 3 instead of on the afterbeat. And boy, you had to think so hard because it was just so opposite of what you're used to hearing. But you're very clear with your count-offs, very good. Louis Armstrong, there's a video of him performing in the 30s. And it's funny because he does what you're doing, but he does it with his feet on the floor, and the band just comes right in. You go up the tempo. Go to the tempo that you played in the performance. you're doing it really well, and it's a lost art. And one of the great things about CDs and the remastering of recordings, we could listen to Jimmy Noon recordings or early Gene Krupa, where they were using the snare, and on the older recordings we couldn't hear what they were doing, but now we can hear very clearly what they, I used to work with an old-time drum percussionist that would do the snare stuff, and he would do like press rolls and stuff, and you would do a blues or something, and he could do a press roll on the drum at pianissimo. Like I would play in the low register, and he would be on that snare, and it just barely. But it sounds great. It's just wonderful to hear that. But you can check out like the old masters and hear like all the colors they get. Buddy Rich, he never used a hi-hat. When he was playing with a band led by a clarinetist named Joe Marcella, and he was playing in Dixieland bands. And when he went with Bunny Berrigan, he had to learn to use a hi-hat. It's interesting because a lot of the early guys didn't use hi-hats. When you're solo there, it's very, very nice. As I said, you know that melody, now you can start throwing in color notes, and like just go away from the melody. And so if you're in the key of G, right? Your key of G, right? So throw in some B flats, and that throat B flat, which in classical music we dread because it's a lousy note on the clarinet, but in jazz it gives us the texture that we want. So you don't some B flats, some F naturals, notes, the notes, just add notes. There's a guy in Irving there's a whole culture, and he had a gorgeous sound. Like every clarinet in the business said he had the best tone of everybody. But a lot of times when he was soloing, he would play very close to the melody. But he could really color those blue notes, and he'd be a great guy for you to listen to, because with the sounds you're getting, you get a lot of understanding. So you gentlemen are just marvelous. I'm excited about what you're doing, and I see unlimited possibilities. So the two, just to review, take the arrangements, practice as a mentioned, in the rhythm section you do the same, memorize it. Because you play great, and I could play without the music. Don't let that be your rush. Add some notes to what you're doing. And then the other thing is listen to it. One of my national tracks is called Jazz. But like most traditional tunes, playing about it. And so I think it's on YouTube. If you know how hack it, when you're there's a whole case. In first generation, it's exciting, because that way ultimately, but now you go and see something in the video. And I think I'm really excited.